Dana White only condemning Bryce Mitchell's pro-Hitler rant without action was not enough.
I don't think that's an overreaction. I mean, I think we've talked about this quite a bit, right? And over time, there's been all sorts of things that fighters have said and done that don't get repercussions, and that the subject matter kind of falls in the discussion ends up leading towards the free speech thing that Dana brings up quite a bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
The difference with this one was that the UFC seemed to actually somewhat care, or at least publicly wanted to condemn those ideas. Like, I think we had reached out to them. I'm sure other outlets did for comment. And so I say this to a certain degree, but the UFC did try to get ahead of it. Like Dana sat down at that press conference and started saying, talking about it. So this was a little bit different in that the approach that they took. I'm a little bit not surprised, but it is interesting to hear this be like, this was, like you said, it was a new low. But it was interesting that we haven't really, at least in modern times, see them take this approach for other things, right? Where, if Sean Strickland said something, Dana could say, I don't like this thing, I don't agree with it. Like that whole first part was missing from things that we've heard before. To me, again, like if this could be, we could have a segment on this for hours. I don't think that's an overreaction. I think there's a freedom of speech. Sure, people can say what they want. There's also, I think, the freedom of Dana White and the company to hand out some repercussions, right? And I know we can get into the debate of what those things can look like for contractors or whatever, but I mean, there is always the threat of like getting rid of somebody, of cutting them.
Sure.
I do think that they, in theory, to my knowledge, they do still sign a code of conduct policy. I'm not sure if that.
Are we sure about that?
I believe it's still I think it's still in the promotional agreements as part of it. So, I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and read through that again to see if there's other things that gives them leeway to, delay giving you fights or something. But I definitely think if there was a time that they were going to do something, this would have been it. I'm not sure what the next step would be. Like, is there something that could be said that would be worse, that would get, is there anything that would get
that's the question? Yeah, that is the question.
I mean, and the thing was about this one, like, I definitely think the magnitude of this comment, it reached, like, Bryce Mitchell was trending in the United States in the top 10 on a day that the plane helicopter crash happened in DC. There's all sorts of things with the new president going on. Like, this wasn't like a slow news day or something.
No.
This was something that became a major story in a pretty busy period of time. So I think Dana in the UFC, like, they kind of, I'm not justifying it, they dug themselves, they put themselves in a position, right, where if they had done something at the same time, I think they would have made themselves look, it's tough, right? Like, Dana would have to go back on some of the things that he said.
I get you. No, well,
this they're just willing not to do,
Well, this is the problem, man, is that even Dana's message up there, he called Bryce Mitchell a dumb and ignorant and stupid person. He must have done that about a dozen times or so, if not more. And he says in what we just heard, that the problem with social media is that dumb people have a platform. Well, but then the UFC is giving this ignorant and dumb person a platform. Like, the UFC is part of the problem. How is he so obtuse that he just doesn't see that or realize it, or just doesn't care? Because Bryce Mitchell is only relevant as a person because he is a UFC fighter. That's part of the problem. If he's not a UFC fighter, then he's just another dumb, ignorant person spouting BS on the internet, right? And we don't care about it. We're not writing stories. It's not making headlines. But that's the part that baffles me with Dana, and which is why I'll just say everything he said. Yeah, sure. To his credit, he addressed it. He got out in front of it. He didn't wait for a question. But really, without action, it's just hollow words that mean nothing.
Right. And I mean, that's the biggest thing. And if you go back and look, and again, we could spend hours trying to figure out where that line is or whatever. And I get it. The thing that makes it a little difficult sometimes is, like, I do think there's an element of fighters say things that maybe other athletes couldn't get away with. This is a sport where people punch and kick each other in the head. They are supposed to build fights. They're supposed to say insulting things. But I think we're pretty clear on what the line probably should be here. And so for them to kind of have this history where it's actually interesting, because if you go back and for some of the fans maybe that were over the pandemic that just jumped in and kind of getting familiarized with the sport, the approach that the promotion's taken now is very different than what they used to do. I mean, I remember you can find the clip somewhere. I believe it was Ariel Helwani was doing an interview with Dana White about some comments that Matt Mitrione had made about Fallon Fox, who was like the first kind of well-known transgender fighter, right? And he had said some stuff. And I think Dana actually in that video, if you watch it, it's like kind of like something from a different universe. Like he's like, you know, he says, again, I don't want to misquote him. You can look up the clip for yourself, but it was something along the lines of like, you know, I know people are calling for this, you know, for freedom of speech or whatever. He's like, you say that kind of stuff in any company in the world, you're going to get in trouble. You're going to get fired. You're going to, you know, he's like, this isn't that sort of issue. So it is interesting. I don't know if we can pinpoint a moment in time where the promotion kind of took a different approach to this whole thing. Like, you know, there were other times, like I know everybody brings up the Miguel Torres thing where he tweeted something that was a joke from a comedy special that was about a rape van or something. You know, I think he got some sort of reprimands for that. I think there were times, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, different gay slur stuff. So I'm interested. It would be very interesting to hear like why the approach has changed. Because I think that first thing that Dana kind of laid out there, what I was saying about when he was talking to Ariel about Mitrione, seems to be like the complete opposite argument to what he says now.
Yeah. My answer to that would probably be COVID. COVID would probably be like the point, right? Because that's where it became about, you know, cowering and being silenced, and, you know, a lot of freedoms were being taken away, yada, yada, yada. That's what people said, right? And like the UFC really used that as like motivation to just, no, we're going to do whatever we want. We're going to do this. And we're not stopping, you know? I would say COVID was probably the point, but man, this whole thing, if Bryce Mitchell, who's like a mid UFC fighter, can't get released after talking about Adolf Hitler in a positive light, if he doesn't get released, then I don't know that anybody will ever get released from this company for their comments. But hey, man, you know, that's what we're doing. It's all in the name of free speech, my friend.
MMA Junkie AI.